Hey, good morning, guys. Hope you guys are having a good start to your morning. This is the live stream with the Editing Bard. A couple of new things. Hopefully, you guys are able to hear me all right. I got a new mic for the lapel, so hoping that actually comes through. Otherwise, this is going to be very, very, very sad. Also got like a fancy new light here, so that way it doesn't show up quite so dark all the time for the videos. So yeah, couple of fun things started. I'm going to be in a new position, whole new background, going to get in a revamp for the office, all that fun stuff. And in addition to that, just so you guys know ahead of time, I'm not going to be here next week. I'm hopefully going to schedule a content video for you for next Friday as I will be traveling. So with that being said, let's dive into some of the questions that I received this week. And the first one is most of these didn't want their names shared, so just kind of working off of that. First one, how to write a book, novel, series, or in any genre. So the first thing with figuring out how you want to write a book or make it part of a series is you need to figure out the elements of genre. Now, the elements of genre is fairly simple. And once this video is complete, I will get a link down in the show notes for you guys. But Writing Excuses podcast actually did an entire season on the elements of genre. I'm still fighting off this cough. Like, it's really bad. So the elements of genre is taking those things that we know. So like the element of wonder, the element of horror, the element of adventure, all those kinds of things. And it's breaking them down into what they are at their very core. Once you understand that, you can write in any genre, which is lots of fun to be able to do. And I plan on doing that with my own writing once I've actually finished with the current fantasy novel that I'm on. Now, the question that was asked was specifically for fantasy. Now, I love fantasy. I specialize in fantasy. So the first thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to figure out the story. What is it that you want to tell, right? Now, everything has been written under the sun. There's not like anything that's going to be like, oh my gosh, that's so mind-blowing. I don't know how I never thought of that before. Almost everything's been written. It just has been. But the point is that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's been written already or not. Like, it's okay. The thing that you want to do is you want to figure out what makes your story unique and how you can take those things that are cliche and kind of flip them on their head or twist them and use them for your story specifically. Now, it's easier said than done. There was a point in time where I I had no idea what it was that I wanted to do. I had no idea what I was writing about. Nothing. And all of my stories started off cliche. I had a Lord of the Rings meets Narnia crossover fan fiction that I wrote that was so unbelievably cliche that, I mean, it gave it a bad name kind of thing. But over time, what I learned was the cliches aren't a bad thing. A lot of people think that, cliches are bad. Cliches aren't bad. Cliches are useful tools that you can use to make your story familiar. Now, the way that you do that, and this does tie into the question, I promise I'm not rambling. The way that ties into the structure of your story is going to differ from author to author. But if there's one particular cliche or trope that you want to, that is in your story, or you feel like is in your story, then what you do is you turn it against the reader. Okay, I did this with my Lord of the Rings fan fiction that I had posted up on Wattpad, and the cliche of oh man, I'm trying to remember what one specifically it was. Um, I can't remember it. I should have looked ahead of time, but I did that in my Lord of the Rings fan fiction where I took a trope that was like a Lord of the Rings specific trope, and I flipped it on its head and subverted the reader's expectations. And I used their expectations. I set their expectations up by using the trope. And so they were like, oh, this is how it's going to go. And then I just nuked their emotions and left them horribly and emotionally scarred, and probably in need of therapy. So taking a trope, turning it on its head and subverting it, and using that to set up a reader expectation, and then subverting that is a great way to utilize a trope when you're setting up your story. Now, when you are planning your book, hey, you're welcome. When you're planning your book, what you want to do is you want to try and look at the big picture. Okay, you don't want to look at the smaller, minute details yet. You want to look at that big picture, and you do that by saying, okay, where do I want the story to start? Where do I want the story to end? And is it going to be contained in one book? Do I want it to resolve in one book? If you're like me, I read things that typically are series. I mean, like behind me, this whole row is like Tolkien and C.S. Lewis. This primarily, yeah, like 3/4 of that row up there is just the Dune saga. So like I read series. That's how I write. And so I do a lot of world building in my fantasy novels to the point that it just ends up bigger. So you want to have that, you want to take a look at it, plan it out. What is the big picture? Where do I want to start? Where do I want it to end? Then what you do is you set up milestones. Now this is a little different than outlining. For me, outlining was always very difficult. Outlining was like, this is what you have to do, and this is what you have to write. And I don't work that way. People have books for their books. I can't. I pants the novels and I kind of write as I go. So the term milestones is something that I created as part of my my worksheets to the Getting Your Story Started worksheets. And what you do is you pick the 3 biggest milestones. So your beginning, your middle, and your end. When you do that, you now have that very big picture. And whether that's over the course of several books or just within the first book, and you probably want to scale it down to what it looks like within the first book itself. So 3, beginning, the middle, and the end. Now, in between those, what you do is you set up little mile markers, little big events, I call them. So you want this to happen, this to happen, this to happen. Middle section, this to happen, this to happen, this to happen, end. What that allows you to do is as you're writing, it allows you to be super creative with everything in between that point. And it just gives you something to write towards. It's a goal, it's a milestone. Now, when I wrote my fan fiction, I did it all up on a whiteboard, and I had tons of little milestones because I needed to keep track of everything. I hadn't done it for like 4 books. I had to do it for the 5th one. And as I was writing, I was having to use my finger, mark off milestones that were happening sooner than I had planned. And that's the thing with the milestones versus the outlining, is that they're fluid. You don't have to have them, or they may happen sooner depending on the characters, the environment, how they're interacting, all that kind of stuff. So planning out those series is a lot of fun. I love doing it. I have an 11-book series that I have literally been planning and working on for 13 years. So I get it. It's a big picture, but it's lots of fun to do. With fantasy, the thing that you want to remember with fantasy is that you need to have, as a writer, a set of rules. And that set of rules is kind of the rules by which your world works. You don't necessarily have to explain that to the reader, but you do need to have a general idea for yourself. And the Writing Excuses podcast goes into that in greater detail. I'm trying to remember what season it was. But essentially, it's like with the magic system. You need to have some idea of how it works, right? For world building, if you're going to have floating mountains, there needs to be a reason why there's floating mountains, not just because floating mountains are cool, which they are, but there needs to be a reason. Is there an element in the earth that's like magnetic, and it was under those particular mountains, and so it's kind of like a magnet where, you know, it's just kind of suspended into space, that kind of stuff. Again, you don't necessarily have to explain that to the reader, but if you have a basic understanding, that's going to allow you to describe the mountains. So like if someone passes underneath it, they're going to feel like this power, right? It could be that magnetic field. And if you have any questions, please feel free to list them in the comments. That's why I get to jump on here every Friday, is to answer questions for writing tips and editing questions. So fantasy is a lot of fun because you can do so many different things. Fantasy is also hard because you can do so many different things. You want to have your world make sense, and you need to keep the reader in a place of suspending their disbelief. And that takes that takes practice. It takes writing. It takes showing it to people who specialize in fantasy, and you can talk with them about it. So like, for example, so in my fantasy novel that I'm working on right now, I have tons of different creatures that I have created, and each one is unique, each one is different, and each one is unique, each one is different, but they are grounded within the world. So they're not just these crazy creatures for the sake of having crazy creatures. This world is made up of creatures that are different and just like either crazy big, crazy dangerous, all that different kind of thing. So, excuse me. So, fantasy suspension of disbelief is key because the reader needs to invest in the story. So hopefully that all makes sense. If you need additional help with building a novel and kind of getting it started, the Getting Your Story Started worksheets that I created are a great way to kind of jumpstart that. They go through brainstorming, outlining, character creation, how to plot the story, because there's difference between having a story idea and having a story with a plot or with a purpose. So if you have any additional questions about that later on, feel free to shoot me an email. My wow, I have not had enough coffee today. My website link is going to be down below in the show notes. And you get the first 3: character creation, brainstorming, and outlining, all for free when you subscribe. Next question, if no one has any other questions, is, let's see, how do I know if I'm good enough to write a book? That was another one. I hear this a lot. And it's a fairly broad question, but it's common to every single reader. I wrestled with that all the time. And when I was starting, it was constantly asking myself, like, can I do it? Can I do this? Because someone's always going to write something better than I'm writing. Someone has written stuff that's better than what I'm writing. And like, where do I fit in that? So the thing that you have to remember is that an author, you don't need to know the every single rule of grammar and punctuation. You don't need to have perfect syntax. You don't need to have a college degree. You don't need these things. They are helpful tools, yes, but you don't need these things. What makes an author, I've boiled it down to 4 things. That's it. 4. Grit, perseverance, determination, and a willingness to learn. If you have those 4 things, if you can commit to those 4 things, you absolutely have what it takes to be an author. Period. End of story. No one else should be telling you differently. And if they do, you thank them for their opinion and you move on, because that's all it is. It's an opinion. I work with so many beginning authors, whether it's in the developmental edit stage. So they've written their first draft or their second draft, and then we go through it, or the story coaching, and I help them from start to finish with their book. The key to every single one of them is those 4 things. It boils down to those 4 things. You have to have them, and you can develop them. It's not necessarily going to be like, hey, I automatically have all 4 of these. Grit and perseverance and determination is a mindset. Being an author is having the mindset that you are going to do this, because writing a book is hard work. It is super hard. You're literally creating new worlds with fantasy, with science fiction. Even if you're basing a little bit of the elements from like real world stuff in your book, you're still creating an entire different world. That takes a lot of brain power. That's a lot of creativity. It's hard work. Then you have to make it all make sense, because it may play out like a movie in our head, but trying to get it down on paper, sometimes it's like, well, what are words? What are the words to describe this? Like, I can see it, but how do I paint that picture for someone else? It's hard. So you have to have that mindset of like, I'm going to learn how to write better. I'm going to learn how to tell better stories. And you do that by doing a lot of writing. You have to practice your craft. You have to continue to write constantly. And if you run out of ideas, writing prompts are a huge help. I've used those so often to help kind of spur clients into, it's like, well, hey, why don't you write something about this? And I give many writing prompts in the worksheets, which is one of the reasons why they've been so successful with clients and with the teens that I initially created them for, is because there's many writing prompts to jumpstart them. The other thing is you need to read. You need to read often. You don't have to read like 20 books a year or whatever ridiculous number blog posts tell you you need to read. You should try and at least read one book a year, but ideally you would try and do more if you have the time. But you also want to read in the genre that you're trying to write in. Now, for me, I read Tolkien, so Lord of the Rings, when I was growing up. I finished the Fellowship of the Ring when I was 10, and just before, and I just breezed through the Two Towers and the Return of the King before the second movie came out. Like I was just, I went full nerd. So writing fantasy to me is second nature. I've read it. I've learned about it. I know the tropes. I know the cliches, and I've learned and am continuing to learn how to utilize those to my advantage. If you're writing sci-fi, read sci-fi. One of the best ones that I recommend that you read if you're doing sci-fi is Dune. The Dune saga, which now spans like 25, 26 books, which I did manage to read all of them in a year at one point. That I was cruising that year. There's so much there. I mean, you just take my recommendation, do yourself a favor, read the Dune saga. Read the originals first. There's 6, all by Frank Herbert. Read those ones first, and then move on to the 2 sequel prequels, and then the 2 end ones. There's a lot, just a lot of books. That's where I learned a lot of the writing, the political intrigue, the plots within plots and schemes and all that kind of stuff. It's just filled with that. When you read that and you take on the mindset of an author and of a student, and you analyze the writing, you look at how they structure things, then you are going to start adopting a lot of the phrasings, a lot of the terminology, and that's okay. Like you're not going to like absorb it 100% where you then lose your author voice. You're going to do it in a way that is beneficial for you because you're going to start writing and improving. Now, when I write fantasy, I typically use Tolkien-esque dialogue. It's a little bit stiff, it's a little bit more formal, and a little bit more classic. Now, I write towards a YA audience, and that doesn't necessarily mesh together well. So I work on, like during the second draft, working on loosening it up a little bit, having it a little bit more free-flowing, a little bit more conversational tones. So when you're doing this, absorb what it is that you're reading. Look at how they do it, the style, all of it. Because as you do that, you're going to improve your own craft because you're going to be practicing. So grit, perseverance, determination, and a willingness to learn. Those are the 4 things that you need to be an author. And especially if you're moving towards wanting to publish your book someday, that's the mentality, that's the kind of mindset that you have, because what that's going to do is going to prepare you for the business side of writing. And I actually have a video that I've recorded about self-publishing and the business mindset behind it and how it's actually a business. And that is in the process of being edited and should be up within the next few weeks if all goes well. I am not a master editor. I am a master bard. I tell stories. That is my proficiency. So when it comes up, be graceful because it is edited by a noob. I'm just going to throw that out there. So next question. So hopefully that answers the question for, am I good enough to write a book? The answer is simply yes, you are. And you need to be in the mindset and the mentality of grit, determination, perseverance, and a willingness to learn. And you will get there. You will succeed. And if you need someone to help you write a book, just because again, writing is hard. I do story coaching. And so I walk you through the entire process. It's $100 a month for the apprentice package, which is like the kind of the client's favorite. And that can be broken up into 2 smaller payments if you want. So next question was, how do I improve my writing? That kind of goes along with what I was talking about with reading. Reading a lot, especially in the genre that you're writing in, is going to improve your writing. And actually writing is going to improve your writing. Now, this ties in to something that I saw this morning, which was a post about it was an article from Medium on like the 5 tips or the 5 writing habits that these best-selling authors use and all that kind of stuff. Those aren't bad, but in my opinion, they at times hinder more than they help. And that's because you're learning someone else's writing process. You're trying to adapt or take verbatim what they're doing and making it and trying to do it exactly. And it's not that it doesn't work, because I mean, a lot of people do it, but they kind of lose out on their own author voice when they're doing that. Which is why I encourage you, like when I'm talking about, writing processes and writing goals, setting goals for word counts, all that kind of stuff, that's stuff that's worked for me. That's how I busted out 50,000 words in January. So I know it works, but it's going to look different for every single person. And that's the key, is that everything that I'm telling you and sharing with you for goals, processes, all that kind of stuff, you have to take and look at it and analyze it and be like, what fits for me? What makes sense for me in my writing process? Do I have a writing process? If not, maybe I start with this. So, I don't want to be one of those people that you write an article about and say, this is what the Bard says that you have to do to be successful. Because it's not the case. I found success in it, which is why I'm sharing it with you guys, because I want you guys to be successful in writing. Writing is a huge passion of mine, and I've been doing it for 13 years. So I've learned a lot of stuff, and I just want to simply share that. And then I am expecting you, the only expectation I have is that you take it and apply it in a way that makes sense to you, because it's different for every single person. No one fits in a box. So that's all I'm going to say about that one. Otherwise, I'll probably just go into a rant. Okay, so answered. Where'd my question go? Oh, when should I start on social media for my book? So the question was, I copied that out of an excerpt. They were trying to figure out, like, when do I start promoting my book? So you've done the book, you've got the editing done, and you're like, okay, now what? You should start promoting your book way before it's done. I see this happen a lot with authors, is they think that they can't promote their book until it's finished and it's printed. At that point, it's kind of too late. You're starting with no momentum whatsoever for your book. What you want to try and do ahead of time is 2 or 3 months before your book is set to be released. Like, the expectation is your proofreader is done, your beta readers are getting back to you on information, you're setting up the stuff for either self-publishing or traditional publishing, doesn't matter which. And you want to start building up a following of people. And I have I posted a blog article on my website about how to build up a fan base. I'll post the links down in the show notes for that. But then this is part of the business mindset. You are running a business. You are selling a commodity. So you have to think like a business person. And a business person is thinking several months down the road. Okay, it's not just in here and now. It's several months out. So when you're doing that, you want to be on social media. You want to be on Facebook. Facebook is very different from Instagram, and Instagram is very different from Twitter, and Twitter is very different from the other two. Each one should be tackled uniquely and differently. You should be doing giveaways. Maybe not every single week, but for like for an autographed book, for a freebie, have freebies on your author site. You want to start building excitement, sharing excerpts from your book, utilizing Canva to do those kinds of posts. If you're not familiar with Canva, it's a super helpful tool where you can upload pictures, you can design them, you can customize them. I use that for my graphics. I was going to do a special one for today and didn't. I had other editing stuff that I had to get done, so I didn't. It was just me going, it's not exactly what I was going to go for, but sometimes it is what it is. So Canva is very helpful. You can create different graphics. You can put in, you can copy and paste sections of your story to kind of garner interest. All of that kind of stuff, that builds up a community, that gets people excited about it. So that way, when your book is actually published and you're like, hey, guys, guess what? Here's a picture of me with my book. Over here's the link of where you can go buy it. Go do it. You're likely to have some people be going over there to actually purchase your book because they've talked with you, they've gotten to know you. That's the thing. Selling in today's world is very, very different than what it was 20, 30 years ago. There was no internet. There was no Amazon. There was, it was dark times, there wasn't this way to connect with people. So you had to sell very differently. Today's generation, my generation, is they want, we're nostalgic. We want relationships. I want to get to know the author, because that's one of the biggest things that authors miss is they think, well, I have to promote the book. I have to sell the book. It's not entirely accurate anymore. You have to sell yourself. You have to market yourself. That is what people are actually investing in. They're not investing in the book necessarily, or not wholly in the book. They're investing in you as an author, especially the indie author community. The indie author community is very tight-knit. So there's a lot of people that I see on my Twitter account. They're supporting each other. They're buying each other's books. They're doing giveaways, and it's successful. Are you going to get thousands of dollars off of these? No, probably not. If you did, that's even better, but it's not likely to happen. But doing that allows you to connect with people. You got to connect. You got to build relationships with people. This is a day and age where people are so alone. I feel like I'm getting a little off topic, but people feel alone in the big world, despite the fact that they have thousands of followers, right? And when you invest in somebody, that makes them feel less alone. And so they're more likely to connect with you. So if you're connecting with people, if you're having just conversations with people, investing in others, people are going to invest in you. That's part of what marketing is you're trying to sell something to someone, but they have to be invested in it first. And in a day and age where, we have social media and, live streams and all that kind of stuff, you guys aren't investing so much in necessarily what the comments that I have for you guys, the suggestions. You're investing in me because I'm investing in you guys, right? I'm pouring out and just giving away all of this content because I want to build up the author community. And you're reinvesting that back in me by being here and watching it, which I appreciate. And that's how this new community works. Is from everything that I've seen, it's supporting one another and building each other up. That really helps. It helps more than just you, right? We are very self-centered, and writing is about more than just us. It's about sharing our stories, whether that's personal through nonfiction, or our personal story in the form of fiction, or just we have these ideas and these crazy concepts of like, what are these questions? How do I want to wrestle with this? How do I do life? We do that through writing. So if we do that through our writing and we're trying to sell it to somebody, they're buying into you. They're buying you. So part of it, I feel like I'm rambling in that, but it's one of my passions is to help authors understand that you have a story to tell and only you can tell it. And when you're trying to market that, you need to market yourself, not entirely your book. You need to connect. You need to have connections. You need to I hate network because it's such a business, it's like a salesy business term. I was in sales for a long time, so networking was just kind of the part of the vocabulary. But building friendships, why don't we just call it that? Why don't we just call networking building friendships, building author friends? Authors need friends. We're a lonely bunch of people sometimes because we're sitting in a cave. We are talking to ourselves through characters, and we have very limited people that we can actually talk to. So we need to invest in each other. All right, I'm rambling at this point. Rambling, ranting, probably a little bid of both. I got way off topic. When should I start your social media for the book? Months in advance. Let's if you're in the process of writing a book, just start. Just get on there. Throw fear to the wind. Say, screw you. We're not going to do it. I'm not going to listen to you. And I'm just going to start. I'm going to just start talking to people. If you're on Twitter, feel free to follow me at SDHoward3. That's me on Twitter, the Editing Bard. Follow me on Facebook. You can find me there at the Editing Bard. And I'm going to invest in you guys, regardless of whether you're a client of mine. It's just I can't help it. Again, off topic. Start months in advance. Months and months in advance. If you're starting out, getting on social media and asking questions is a great way to build author relationships. It's a great way to build interest in your book. I already have like 3 people that are interested in getting a copy of my book as soon as it's published, and it's going to be sometime next year at minimum. At best, it's going to be next year. So it's not because I'm trying to sell my book. It's because I'm investing in them. I'm investing in the community. So you need to do that. You absolutely should be doing that. Let's see. How do I get back to writing when I haven't in forever? Oof. So, good example of this is from my personal story. I had, so like I said, I've been writing for 13 years. I'm 29 now. I started when I was 16. And when I was 16, I had the Lord of the Rings Narnia crossover idea. And then I moved to, you know what? I want to actually publish my own book someday. I can't do this because I know there's I know there's copyright issues. And being 16 and not really wanting to get sued, I decided to switch it. So I came up with my series name. I was going to write a trilogy. And the trilogy was very much kind of Narnia meets Lord of the Rings, but it was my own take on it. And, you know, 4 kids fall into a fantasy world that's very Lord of the Rings-esque. And they do lots of crazy stuff, coming of age journey, which is, I mean, it made sense. That's the age that I was. So the characters matched that. And I wrote the first draft. And I was like, you know what? This is too much like Narnia. And I stopped. And so I replotted it 3 times. 3 times. The 3rd time, found something that I loved. And I was like, yes, I am on track. And I wrote the first draft and stopped. Because I had plotted my story to death. And it was incredibly discouraging. I had no motivation to write. I was disgusted by my story. And I was just like, this is absolute garbage. No one's going to want to read this. Why am I even bothering? I should just get a real job like everybody's telling me to, and just do that. And so I set it aside for quite a while. And I get grumpy. Like, did that ever happen to you guys? Like you just wake up one day and it's like, I hate life. I hate work. I hate people. I don't like anybody. Yeah, that's pretty much how it is. I get that way. If I'm not writing, I swear to you guys, I'm the worst person to be around if I can't write. So I eventually decided, you know what? Screw this. I'm going to get back into it. And I'm going to go back to my first love, which was fan fiction. And so, but with a purpose. It wasn't just to write fan fiction for the sake of writing fan fiction. It is such a good tool to use because it's like a giant writing prompt. You don't have to come up with anything. Characters are there, the stories are there. You basically just switch some things around and you can just write. So I did that. I went back and I was like, you know what? It would be so cool because I see so many Lord of the Rings stories that are based in the 3rd age, rehashing the same content all the time. And it's almost always a 10th walker and they're super powerful and they couldn't save Middle Earth without this person. Or they fall in love with Gandalf or there's some weird stuff. Weird stuff. But I decided to do something completely different and do my story in the 4th age. And this kind of got me started. It got me thinking again. It got me brainstorming again. And I actually took inspiration from Tolkien's unfinished sequel, which, spoiler, if you didn't know there was an unfinished sequel, there are 15 pages of an unfinished sequel to Lord of the Rings called The New Shadow. It is dark, it's depressing, and it completely matches the tone of my fan fiction. Basically, everybody's dying in it. Also a spoiler. So if you like some of the people from the Fellowship, they are no longer alive in the 4th age. Just saying. Like I said at the beginning, emotionally scarred and traumatized a lot of my readers. So I used fan fiction as a way to experiment with different things. Like if I wanted a specific emotion to be evoked in my reader, then I wrote that and posted it on Wattpad, and I tried then and then I waited to see what the comments were. And the comments were very much in line with what I was looking for. It was just like, you're a monster. It's like, yes, I nailed it. I got him. Like, that's what I was looking for. I got that comment a lot. So fan fiction, if you've been away from writing for a while, writing prompts are the way to go. I'm trying to think of one of any site in particular that has tons and tons of writing prompts. But you just start with fan fiction. If you haven't touched a pen or your keyboard in a while for writing, and it's your own story, and you're just like, I don't even know where to start with this. You need to engage the right side of your brain. That's the creativity side. Okay. The left side is the one that tells us like, you can't do it. Don't listen to the left side of your brain. Use the right side of the brain. Just start writing. Write fan fiction. Use it as a tool to experiment. Let's see. Couch to 80,000 by Tim Clare is full of great writing prompts. Thank you, Shell. Is it Shell? Shell? I don't want to butcher that. I probably already did, so I apologize. But so that is a great one. I will find that and I will post that. Yes, nailed it. I will post a link to that book down in the show notes as well afterwards. So that way people can find it. Couch to 80,000 by Tim Clare, full of writing prompts. Look it up. So there's that as a tool. Then fan fiction. If you need it, or even if you just need inspiration, music is a very powerful inspirational tool. I put on, it depends on what it is that I'm writing. If I'm writing something super angsty, then I just admitted that on live. Okay, I'll admit it. I write angsty stuff. Not like Twilight angsty, because that's just cringy. Like really good emotional, like the feels kind of angsty. I'll put on like kind of like a harder rock. I'll do Red. They're a Christian hard metal band. There's Demon Hunter, again, like hard, kind of a little bit of screamo in there. But the lyrics, so good. Another one, Five Finger Death Punch. Gone Away is just, it's a super feelsy song. I listened to that one for my my main character. Don't tell him, he'll be very angry. So music, go to Wattpad. Wattpad is like author nerddom, like incarnate, aside from fanfiction.net, which is like uber nerddom. And I'm on both, so I can say that it's an uber nerddom. Wattpad is a really great place as long as you're very careful about what it is you're searching for, because you might find out some really weird, creepy stuff. I'll throw mine out there. You can read Tales of the Fourth Age by Silverhand. Just read other people's stories. That goes back to just reading. You know, reading will get that creativity side of your brain juiced and flowing. Doing the writing prompts, doing mini experiments. So testing out different things. So if you're doing, let's say you need to figure out a scene and you want to know that it has that emotional punch that you're looking for. Write it out, send it to somebody that you know who's an author or a reader, and get their feedback. Say like, hey, could you read this? Tell me what you think of it. And if they're just like, that was awful, why would you do that to somebody? And that was what you're trying to evoke. And you're like, hey, thanks, I appreciate it. I'm gonna hire you again. That kind of stuff. That's what I basically did with my my readers on Wattpad. So those are different tips to kind of get it engaged. Again, I will point back to my Getting Your Story Started worksheet. It's full of ways to get your story started. That's the whole point of the worksheets. If you haven't created a story ever, it walks you through that. If you're stuck in the middle of a story, it walks you through that. If you are stuck with writer's block, it walks you through that. If you're just like, how do I just write? Because Lord knows we've all heard that on Twitter, on Facebook, that quote, just write. Just write what? Walk you through that as well. If you just need to brainstorm ideas, I make it easy. It's conversational. It doesn't take itself seriously. One of them is called the plot donut. And I harp on that one all the time because I was craving donuts that day, and I just sat down. That was the best I had, and so I just ran with it. So we talk about sprinkles, we talk about chocolate, and I had to put a disclaimer in there that said I'm not responsible for any binging you do after reading that for donuts. All of these different things are tools. You can write, you can get back into it, but you have to start writing something. You can't just sit down and think on it and think on it and think on it, because that's not engaging the right side of your brain. That's engaging the left side, the analytical side. The analytical side has a purpose, but when you're getting back into the swing of things, you don't live over here. You need to engage this. So maybe if you type, that's your normal mode. I don't prefer that. I prefer handwriting it. It's kinesthetic. It's calming. It actively engages the right side of the brain, whereas the keyboard technically kind of engages more of the analytical side than it does the creative. Didn't know that you were going to get some brain hacks at the tail end of this. God, this cough. The writing helps you push through that because it's something different. If your brain is used to engaging in a certain way, then trying out something different is you're going to have to think about it a little bit more at the start, because it's not going to come naturally. But when you engage the right side of your brain and you actually start writing, that stuff is going to start to flow. And it's kind of like rusty cogs. If you haven't used it in a while, it's not that it's gone. You still know how to write stories. You still know how to come up with crazy worlds. You still know how to write fantasy and science fiction and romance and thrillers and horrors and paranormals and all that other crazy stuff. You still know how to do all that. You just got to get the gears moving, which is why you use writing prompts, which is why you use fan fiction. These are tools to use to help you get those going. You use music. Go outside in nature. Seriously, for real, take a notebook, take a pen, go find somewhere relatively quiet if you can, and sit down and write what you see. And that was actually something, oh gosh, where did I just see that? I'm on so many different pages, I lose track. But that was one of the things, is don't write what you know, write what you see. I have a beautiful view of mountains straight out my window. And the curtain's closed right now for the sake of lighting, but that's what I see. So when I'm doing that, exactly. Thank you. Writing outside is amazing. So when you're writing outside, you're feeling the sun on your skin. You're feeling the wind blow in your hair or beard. In this case, I have no hair. So you're engaging all of your senses at that point. So the creative side of you is just going to start flowing because you are just soaking up everything around you. And I was talking with an author on Wednesday, and she's like, I have to experience what it is that I'm going to be writing about, because then I know what it is that I'm writing about. I can describe it. So she was saying, if I want to run, if my character is running through the trees and getting slapped in the face by branches, I need to run through the trees. I need to experience, like, what does it feel like? The uneven ground, the twigs in the face, all that kind of stuff. And I was like, huh, that's a really good idea. So not everybody's going to have the opportunity to do that, but you can still, just, if you take a moment, take a deep breath, go outside, sit under a tree, sit in the grass, which is super good for you anyway. It's calming, it helps your body relax. Then just imagine yourself, let yourself actually imagine what it would be like. What would it be like? So there's your writing prompt. Okay, we'll end this with a writing prompt. You are outside. Go outside. First off, go outside. Get some sunshine if you can. But sit down and listen to the birds, listen to the wind, feel the sun on your face, all that kind of stuff. And if you don't have the opportunity to get outside, then go and imagine, what would it feel like to just sit there and just bask in the sun? What does the heat feel like? What is the wind doing? What birds do you hear? Are you in front of a lake? Are you at a park? Are you sitting on your back lawn, in a rocking chair, just kind of watching the kids play? What is it that you're doing? Take that and write something. It doesn't need to be thousands of words. It could just be a couple hundred. But just think about that. Imagine that. And that's going to help you. If you just spend time just in here, spend time in your head, imagining, thinking through things, how it looks, how it would feel, how it tastes, smells, the touch. If you do that, that is going to get those wheels turning. That is going to help your brain get into that creative mindset, because you need to unlock that right side of the brain. This is where you do all of your creativity. So you got to actively engage it. And it doesn't just happen on accident. You have to be purposeful about it. Don't overthink it. Overthinking is the left side of the brain. We don't want to listen to the left side of the brain while we're writing the book. We use that for the editing and all of the madness that we have to figure out later when we're proofreading. And yeah, it's the party pooper sometimes, especially when you're trying to write. The left side of the brain is kind of the party pooper, and the right side of the brain is just like, yeah, we're doing this. So keep that in mind. They both work well when you're using them in the right mode, but when you're writing, you need to actively engage the right side of the brain. So that is all that I got for you guys today. I hope you guys got something amazing out of it. I appreciate you guys interacting and asking questions. If you guys have questions that you want me to answer, then please feel free to comment during the live stream. I'll answer them live. If you guys think about it afterwards, connect with me. You can connect with me on Twitter. You can connect with me on Facebook. If you go to my website, theeditingbard.com, you can send me an email. I have my email link on the contact page. I have links to all of my social media, so you can contact me there. And yeah, I want to answer the questions that you guys have about writing. And I may not be able to answer all of them right away, but it's either going to end up in a live stream, in a blog post, or in a video in general. So some way I'm going to get those questions answered for you guys, because I want to help you guys become the best authors that you can possibly be. Like I said at the top, I'm not going to be here next week doing a live stream because I will be traveling, helping my mom move. So I'm working really hard to get a video edited, some content edited, so that way I have at least something to post for you guys next Friday. If you have any questions, again, shoot them over to me. I appreciate you guys taking the time and joining me on today's live stream. And you're very welcome. And I will look forward to talking with you guys again soon. All right, guys, take care.